Election season is here. Okay, we are a few short weeks away. Early voting has already started in Georgia. And speaking of Georgia, I drove to Atlanta with my mother last week for a boxing event. I was commentating at a boxing event in Midtown Atlanta. And so we drove from Baltimore to Atlanta, 10 hours. And I did get a chance to catch the debate between Wes Moore and Dan Cox. Listened to it while we were in the car. Watched it. We had it on. I had it on my phone. I got one of those little, phone holders that's on my rearview mirror. So we watched the debate. There were a lot of sparks that flew between Wes Moore and Dan Cox. They debated over police, abortion, a lot of different things. And I thought that, of course, Dan Cox is a right-wing, MAGA, far-right candidate. So during the primary, they talk crazy. Usually during the general election, when it gets to November, it tends that, depending on where that candidate lives, they kind of move towards the center. Try not to talk as crazy because they need to get Democrats and independents to vote for them. So let me explain this. The way that this works, you have a candidate. Initially, they have what they call the primaries, right? And the primaries, just as it sounds, it is the beginning. It is the start. So in the primaries, you are just trying to have your constituents vote for you, just them. And whatever your party is, they're going to select the candidate that's going to go against the candidate that the other party selects. This is done in the primary. Who's going to be your representative? Who represents each party? Once they determine who the representative is, then in November, they have the general. Now, the general is going to require you to get votes from people in another party. And when that happens, the extreme views that the person had initially, they usually leave those in the past like they never happened. That's what it is. They usually change up. And this is accepted behavior. This is what politicians do. This is what normally happens. They talk one way and then they start talking another way. So that is what's happening with a lot of candidates. That's what happened with Dan Cox. During the primary, when he was trying to get the Republicans' votes, he was talking all that old, Donald Trump MAGA stuff. He was even bussing folks up to the insurrection. That's how connected he was all of that. But now he tries to spin it another way. Now he wants to try to get Democrats to not think that he's as crazy as he appears to be. So last week we had the gubernatorial candidates, Wes Moore, Dan Cox, head-to-head in the only televised debate that's going to happen for this midterm election. Moore has refused to accept any other invitations. And he was asked about this, and he said that he'd rather spend his time talking to the people and not a whole bunch of conversations with Dan Cox. Both candidates claim that they will, honor the outcome of the election. I don't know. Cox, of course, continues to discredit Wes Moore's upbringing, called Wes Moore a phony, and used the question about why Moore chose to only participate in one debate and pointed out these inaccuracies in his biography. You want to talk about inaccuracies in biography? Herschel Walker has a whole lot of inaccuracies. But Cox said there are so many things in his book that are completely false. I wonder where he got that from. I'm pretty sure that Dan Cox did not read Wes Moore's book. Wes Moore called Dan Cox an extremist election denier, called him a phony. These were just a few of the names that the candidates called each other. Shortly after Cox called Moore a phony, Moore fired back, calling his challenger an extreme election denier whose rhetoric and policies are not only dangerous and divisive, but will take our country backwards. Oh, yeah. They shook hands before the debate, but they took the gloves off and they were bare knuckle brawling with words. You know what I mean? Both candidates seemingly agree on marijuana legalization and decriminalization. Now, of course, legal recreational marijuana is on the ballot this November in Maryland. Both candidates were asked to state their stances on the issue. Surprisingly, if there was one topic that the candidates could find some middle ground on, it was for the sticky icky. I thought that was interesting. Now, Dan Cox and Wes Moore have completely different stances on abortion. No surprise there. Cox is pro-life. His website states that he opposed the bill in the Maryland House that would allow Maryland to become a sanctuary state. And he also voted against a bill earlier this year that would expand abortion care and access. No surprise there. Moore, on the other hand, said that he believes abortion is health care. Many Democrats talk like this. Abortion is health care. That is between a woman and her doctor. Moore also pointed out that his opponent, Dan Cox, praised Donald Trump and the Supreme Court on the day that Roe versus Wade was overturned. So Wes Moore favored to win the debate. Favored to win the governor's race. We say that. I do feel that he won the debate. Dan Cox did not look terrible. He didn't do that bad. I definitely feel that this is a winnable race for Wes Moore. It is a winnable race. It is his race to lose. His race to lose. There was more talk about Larry Hogan in this debate than I really expected. There was talk about, I supported Hogan on this. I supported Hogan on that. And then, of course, Wes Moore bringing up the fact that Hogan called Cox, some kind of crazy person, basket case, all of that. So they're talking about Hogan. Hogan comes up, all good. His candidate didn't win. He has not supported Cox. And I think that he went as close to supporting Wes Moore as he could. He couldn't come out and say that he supports the Democratic candidate. He couldn't do that. Just like when the moderator asked Wes Moore, and he asked Dan Cox as well, to give Hogan a letter grade on the job that he's done. Cleverly, Wes Moore said, I got to give him an eye for incomplete. Term isn't over yet. I can't really grade him. Incomplete. Good grade. I mean, because he can't really, as the Democratic candidate, he couldn't come out and say, oh, I give him an A, right? Because they give him a B. Couldn't do that. He didn't want to throw him under the bus because he's been as nice as he can be to him, considering that there are four opposed parties. Of course, Cox said, I'll give him an A. Even though he don't bang with him like that. Cox don't like him. He don't like Cox. But that's politics. That's how politics works. That's how it goes in the big city. My My former manager used to say that. That's how it goes in the big city. We're gonna do this. We're gonna take a quick break, and we're gonna come back. So much more.